You sold the house? Your son's house? Andrew shouted. Elaine, his mother, didn't flinch. No, Andrew, I sold my house, the one you and your wife tried to steal. Heather, her daughter-in-law, froze mid-step, color draining. You're my mother, for God's sake! Elaine's voice was ice. And you forged my signature like a stranger. Then softly, I buried your father here. I won't bury myself too. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Elaine adjusted the soft lilac scarf around her neck, fingertips lingering on the tiny embroidered flowers her late husband used to compliment. The sun was beginning to slant low across the sprawling backyard, casting golden stripes through the oak trees and across the setup. A gauzy backdrop, vintage furniture hauled in for aesthetic, and floral arrangements that cost more than her first car. She stood still for a moment, waiting. The photographer, a 20-something with lens tattoos on his forearm and an iPad tucked under one arm, called out, "All right, immediate family first?" He glanced over the assembled group, his eyes moving over her like glass over air. Didn't even pause. Elaine smiled anyway and took a tentative step forward. Heather's voice cut through the air, smooth and sharp as a champagne flute rim. "Maybe Mom can sit this one out. It's a very tight frame." Her son, Andrew, scratched the back of his neck, avoiding Elaine's eyes. "Yeah, Mom, we thought maybe you'd be more comfortable on the patio. You know, out of the sun. Out of the frame." Elaine blinked. "Oh, sure." She glanced down at her soft gray slacks and matching cardigan. Simple, yes, but chosen with care. Her pearl studs had been their anniversary gift from 40 years ago. She'd put on a touch of blush, mascara, not for vanity, for belonging. Heather ushered the group into place, Andrew in a tailored blazer, Lucy in white tulle with gold sparkles, Heather's family flanking them like a magazine cover waiting to happen. Elaine sat on the patio chair Andrew pointed to, far enough to be politely excluded, close enough to hear the photographer's countdowns and canned encouragements. "Big smiles! Chin up! Say family!" Elaine rested her hand on the armrest, fingers curling slightly into the weathered wood. The iced tea on the table beside her had gone watery. She didn't drink it. Birdsong trickled in from the trees. Somewhere in the house, the dishwasher hummed. She could smell the faint sweetness of lavender from the garden's edge, but it didn't comfort her. Not today. Heather laughed a little too loudly between poses, tilting Lucy's face just so toward the light. "This one's going in the holiday cards," she trilled, "and the website banner." Elaine smiled faintly. She was good at that, soft, small smiles that stayed just behind the lips. 37 years married, 2 kids, a house she cleaned top to bottom for decades. And somehow now a polite afterthought. She looked down at her lap. Her hands weren't wrinkled so much as weathered. Strong from scrubbing floors, folding laundry, comforting fevered foreheads. Now those same hands sat still in her lap while someone else posed in front of the hydrangeas she'd planted. Andrew had promised they'd do something special to honor Richard, her husband, who passed 3 months earlier. But the day had turned into glamour and filters. Not remembrance. Elaine exhaled slowly, eyes scanning the gathering. That's when she saw it. Heather stood near the makeshift backdrop, holding a manila folder half tucked under her arm. The papers inside were catching sunlight at the edges, not quite visible but familiar in layout and typeface. Heather's mother leaned in, whispering something. Heather opened the folder, flipping a few pages. One fluttered a bit in the breeze, and for a second too long, Elaine saw it. A mortgage document. The name printed at the top, above the fine legal lines, wasn't Heather's. It wasn't Andrew's. It was hers. Elaine May Gardner. She stared. The breath caught in her chest. Not like a gasp, more like a hold. A suspension. Why was her name still there? Hadn't Andrew and Heather insisted they handled everything after Richard died? Didn't they say the house was too complicated and already in process? Elaine had trusted them. She hadn't asked questions. She'd signed things when they asked her to. She'd been tired. Now her name sat atop that document like it still meant something. Okay, let's reset for couples-only shots, the photographer shouted. Elaine stood up, slowly, quietly. She walked to the edge of the patio, where the light hit the grass in golden patches. She didn't speak, but she smiled. For the first time that day, it wasn't for them. It was for something else entirely. Elaine's glass clinked gently as she set it back down on the patio table, condensation sliding down the sides like sweat on her temples. The voices from the photoshoot carried. Across the lawn, Heather barking cheerful instructions, Andrew trying too hard to sound casual. She never liked when his voice got that high and strained. It meant he was pretending not to squirm. From her chair, Elaine's eyes flicked back to the manila folder. Heather had carelessly set it down on the side table next to a bottle of mineral water and a tube of coral lipstick. Just for a moment. But a moment was enough. Elaine leaned forward, scanning the header on the top document, catching a date and a section number. A refi. Her name. Still there, centered in bold. The tea had gone lukewarm, but she kept sipping, masking the sudden buzz under her ribs. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, she dug through the fireproof lockbox she kept in the linen closet behind the old towels. Inside, a folder labeled Mortgage 2017, RG in Richard's handwriting, careful and blocky. Her late husband had always been meticulous with documents, even when chemo made his hands tremble. She remembered the conversation now, vague at the time, gentle. "I'm putting it in your name, Elle. Safer this way, just in case something happens." At the time, she'd laughed and said, "You're not going anywhere, Richard." But he had, 3 months ago. She sat cross-legged on the carpet, the hallway light casting long shadows. Paper after paper confirmed what the patio document had hinted at. The house had never been fully transferred. The trust paperwork was intact, but the deed still named her the legal owner. Not a co-owner, not a beneficiary. The owner. And now they were behind on payments. The next morning, Elaine made breakfast, the usual Sunday routine. She watched as Heather scrolled through Pinterest photos at the counter while Andrew stirred his watery coffee. "I was thinking," Heather said, tapping her phone, "we should finally remodel the guest room, turn it into an office/guest space, maybe put in a Murphy bed. That pink quilt has to go." Elaine didn't look up from her eggs. "That pink quilt is older than you. It was stitched by hand." Heather smiled, teeth tight. "Exactly. We're going for a more updated vibe." Andrew cleared his throat. "Just something more modern, Mom?" Elaine looked up. Her fork hovered for a second, then dropped gently onto the plate. "Sure. Whatever makes sense." She didn't argue. She didn't correct them. She didn't tell them she was the one paying the taxes on the house they wanted to modernize. Heather kissed Lucy's forehead before she left for Sunday bar class. Andrew kissed Elaine's cheek in that distracted way, like he was already thinking about the next thing. When the house quieted, Elaine walked to her bedroom and pulled out her phone. She stared at the screen a long while before typing out the number from memory. 2 rings. "Brian Myers," a warm, husky voice answered. "It's Elaine Gardner," she said, steady. A pause. "Elaine. Hey, it's been... God, I'm sorry about Richard." "Thank you," she said softly. Then, "Brian, I need the file. From the trust and the deed. Everything." Another pause. "Are you okay?" She looked at the window. Heather's rose bushes bloomed wild and too red against the porch railing Richard built himself. They'd never once thanked her for maintaining them. "I'm about to be," Elaine said. Elaine stood in front of the fridge, the hum of its compressor filling the quiet morning. The printout trembled slightly in her hand, not from nerves, but from the ink still drying. She pressed a magnet against it, right next to Lucy's A- spelling test. The photo was crisp, filtered, and sickeningly cheerful. Heather had captioned it, 3 generations of love. Jas blessed Jas family first. Elaine wasn't in the shot, not even blurred in the background. They had cropped the frame so tight that the old oak tree, the one she and Richard planted as a sapling, barely made the edge. Her chair on the patio was gone. Her iced tea glass, gone. She wasn't a memory. She wasn't even an accident. She was erased. And yet, As she stared at the picture on the fridge, her lips curled up in a soft, unreadable smile. Across the kitchen, the toaster popped. Elaine didn't move. She let the toast cool and harden on its own. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Brian. Deeds still under your name. Title never transferred. Full rights intact. BM. She locked the screen without replying. The weight of those words wasn't shocking. It was clarifying. Like fog lifting after months of gray. There was something deeply settling about knowing that beneath the curated Instagram smiles and throw pillows embroidered with "Home is where the heart is," she still held the foundation. The deed. The bricks. The equity. The leverage. Later that afternoon, she heard Heather's voice through the vent above the hallway, laughter with a sharp edge. I swear, if she asks about the mortgage one more time... Heather's voice dropped to a mocking tone. What's an adjustable rate, sweetheart? Like she's never heard of Google? Andrew's chuckle followed. She's old, babe. She thinks APR is a radio station. Elaine paused just outside the laundry room, basket of fresh sheets in her arms. She didn't flinch. She didn't storm in. She simply walked back to her room and set the basket down. Then she opened the drawer beside her bed and pulled out a slim, floral-covered notebook. At the top of the first blank page, she wrote, "Running tally of disrespect. Sunday. Guest room remodel comment. Monday. Heather mocked my questions about the mortgage. Tuesday. Caught them laughing about me being too old to understand finance." She closed the notebook slowly. No fury, just precision. The next morning, she offered to drive Lucy to her art camp. The child was a softness in Elaine's days, the only person in that house who looked her directly in the eye and meant it. In the rearview mirror, Lucy held up her newest drawing, stick figures under a rainbow. "That's you, Grandma. I put you right there under the tree." Elaine swallowed against the sudden warmth in her throat. "I love it." When they stopped at the corner gas station for a juice box, Elaine paid in cash. As she pulled out her wallet, a small, glossy card slipped out. It fluttered to the floor. She bent down and picked it up. Marla Estes. Lux Home Realty. Your property, your terms. She stared at it for a full beat, then slid it back into her purse, not tucked away, but right at the front pocket. That night, after everyone had gone to bed and the glow from Heather's laptop finally died, Elaine returned to the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of wine, Richard's favorite Cabernet, and stood in front of the fridge again. She looked at the photo and took it in, not with sadness, not with bitterness, with strategy. Elaine wiped down the kitchen counter, slow and methodical, her hand trailing across the marble like she was polishing bone china. In the background, the microwave beeped. Heather and Andrew sat at the island, hunched over cold lasagna and their phones. Lucy sat in silence, picking the olives off her salad one by one. "Didn't you say the contractor's coming Friday?" Heather asked, not looking up from her screen. "Might push to Monday," Andrew replied. "He said he's swamped with requests. Market's nuts right now." Elaine opened the fridge and pretended to look for something. She knew exactly what was inside. Limp greens, a half bottle of wine, the birthday cake from Heather's side of the family no one offered her a slice from. She didn't eat. She wasn't hungry for anything they were serving. At 10:45 the next morning, a black Volvo rolled up the driveway. Elaine stood at the front window, mug in hand, watching the man in a navy blazer step out with a discreet folder and laser measurer. He knocked twice. Soft, respectful. She opened the door without hesitation. "Ms. Gardner?" "That's me." "Evan Merrick, Sable Appraisals. Thanks for trusting us with this," he said, stepping inside. "Your realtor said to be discreet." "Good," Elaine said, voice low. "Let's not waste time." She led him through the house, pointing out the original crown molding in the den, the hand-laid tile her husband installed in the sunroom, the garden that bloomed every spring like clockwork. The house exhaled memories in every room. Richard's cologne still lingered in the closet, faint but stubborn. In the attic, dust caught in the sunlight like a snowstorm paused mid-fall. Evan took his measurements, jotted quiet notes. "This is a solid structure. And this neighborhood, frankly, it's gold right now. People want character, not just new builds." Elaine nodded but said nothing. Her hands remained folded in front of her as though they didn't trust themselves. He paused in the kitchen. "May I ask why you're appraising?" She gave him a polite but unrevealing smile. "Just updating the portfolio." He chuckled. "Fair enough." When he left, she locked the door behind him and leaned against it for a long moment, feeling the cool brass of the handle press into her spine. The kitchen still smelled faintly of garlic and lemon from last night's roast chicken. Heather had said it tasted dry. Elaine had said nothing. That night, Lucy crawled onto the couch beside her, curling her legs under herself like a kitten. "Grandma?" Elaine brushed the girl's hair behind her ear. "Yes, sweetheart. I told my teacher we live in your house. Is that okay?" Elaine paused. "Why would you say that?" Lucy shrugged. "Because you're the only one who acts like it's home." Elaine didn't answer right away. She just pulled the girl close and let her rest her head against her side. The weight of her was warm, trusting, heavy in the way only children and truths could be. The next day, Andrew stepped into her room uninvited. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loose. "Can we talk?" Elaine looked up from her needlepoint. "Of course." He sat on the edge of her bed, hands clasped. "We're in a tough spot financially. Heather's medical bills from last year, the car, Lucy's camp." He rubbed his jaw. "We might need to take out a loan or refi again." Elaine waited. He looked at her, eyebrows raised like she owed him something. "We might need you to co-sign." She studied his face. So much of Richard in the bone structure, but none in the eyes. "I'll think about it," she said softly. His posture sagged with relief. He kissed her cheek like a child asking for more candy. That night, she opened her email. The screen glowed in the darkness like a whisper from a different life. Subject: Preliminary offer. 742 Woodmere Avenue, from Marla Estes. Body: Elaine. Appraisal came back strong. "We have an early offer. Buyers motivated. All cash. Immediate close. Ready when you are." Elaine stared at the screen, wine untouched beside her. The house was worth more than she'd thought. More than they knew. Elaine stirred her coffee without drinking it, watching the sugar swirl into nothing. The silence in the kitchen was brittle. Andrew sat across from her, his knee bouncing under the table, eyes darting to the clock above the stove as if it might speed things along if he willed it. "Mom," he said finally, exhaling like it hurt to be humble. "I wouldn't ask if we weren't underwater." She looked at him evenly, her face unreadable. "It's a short-term loan," he continued. 30 days. Tops. Heather's consulting check is due mid-month, and the bank just needs someone stable to co-sign. That's you. Elaine tilted her head slightly. "Co-sign for what exactly?" "A bridge loan," he said too quickly. "To cover a gap while we, refinance some things." She tapped her spoon twice on the rim of her mug, the metal clinking loud in the quiet. "Is this about the house?" she asked, voice light. "No," he said, a fraction too fast. "It's just temporary." I swear Elaine smiled, small and warm like she hadn't heard the desperation baked beneath his pitch. "I appreciate you thinking I'm still stable. That's flattering." Andrew's lips pulled into something between a smile and a grimace. "So, is that a yes?" She took a long, slow sip of the now lukewarm coffee and set it down with care. "Let me sleep on it." She didn't sleep on it. By noon the next day, she was parked outside the mortgage office, hands steady on the steering wheel. The receptionist, a young woman with sky-blue nails and a nervous smile, offered her coffee. Elaine declined. "I'm following up on an attempted title transfer," she said, pulling out the folder with the deed in her name. "I believe my name is still listed as the sole owner, but I'd like confirmation." The girl clicked around on her keyboard, brows lifting slightly. "Yes? It looks like a transfer was initiated last year. March 15th, 2022. But it was flagged." Elaine leaned in, her stomach cold. "Flagged? For missing authorization. It was missing your signature." Her throat tightened, but her voice stayed calm. "Who initiated it?" The girl hesitated. "I can't give you names, ma'am. Just dates and status." Elaine nodded once. She didn't need the name. She already knew. She imagined Heather, in some overly scented office, flipping her hair and smiling at a banker while sliding forged papers across a desk. The sheer audacity of it sent a flush to Elaine's cheeks, but she kept her face composed. "One more thing," she said. "Please print me the file." Every page back home, she spread the pages out on her bed, fingers brushing over the header. Request for title modification. Heather had filled in every box, every field, right down to the box that read, "Owner consent, pending, pending." If Heather hadn't been so careless, if the banker hadn't flagged it, Elaine might already be a guest in her own home in name as well as treatment. She felt something give way inside her. Not a snap, not a break, just release. No more waiting, no more asking, no more pretending not to see what was in front of her. That evening, while Heather prepped her kale salad and Andrew fielded a call from the bank in the living room, Elaine sat in her room with the curtains drawn and her phone in her lap. She called Marla Estes. "I'm ready," she said simply. The realtor didn't need explanation. "Understood. I'll have the paperwork sent to you digitally. No one else will see a thing." The email came through within the hour. Elaine opened the PDF and read it line by line. Then, with one final breath, she clicked sign. The digital pen glided across the screen, affirming what she already knew in her bones. This house wasn't theirs to remodel. It wasn't a favor she had to extend. It was hers, built with decades of labor, love, and mortgage payments signed in sickness and health. They hadn't just tried to steal the house, they'd underestimated its owner. Elaine closed her laptop and stared at the stillness of the room. Downstairs, the sound of laughter floated up. They had no idea what she'd just done, and she wasn't going to tell them. Not yet. Elaine stood at the window, watching the SUV disappear around the corner. Heather wore white again, always white to brunch, as if her wardrobe needed to match the mimosas. Andrew had trailed behind her like luggage. Lucy waved from the back seat. Elaine smiled, waved back, then shut the door. Inside the silence, she could hear her own pulse. She walked straight to her laptop. No hesitation, no pause to sip her tea. She already knew the login by heart. Marla had listed the house through a silent network. Private investors, cash-ready buyers, no nosy neighbors poking through closets, no sign in the yard, no open house balloons, just one clean listing on a secure portal and a wave of pent-up demand. 742 Woodmere Avenue original crown moldings, artisan tile, mature garden, solar panels, clear title. The first request to view the home came in 13 minutes after it went live. Elaine stared at the screen, letting the numbers wash over her. 2 offers by lunch, a third by 2 p.m., over asking. The market was on fire. Downstairs, a robocall rang the landline. She let it go to voicemail. At 3:45, Heather waltzed through the door first, sunglasses still on, her voice chirpy with Prosecco sparkle. "Oh my God, that place had avocado everything," she called out. "They even did like truffle aioli toast." Elaine was folding dish towels in the laundry room, close enough to hear, distant enough to stay invisible. Andrew followed, shoes squeaking slightly on the tile. "Did the contractor confirm for tomorrow?" Heather dropped her bag on the kitchen counter. "No, but I booked a consult with that kitchen design team I told you about. They're coming Thursday." She opened her laptop. "I want to show them the layout with the island we talked about." Elaine paused mid-fold, then walked silently to the desk where Heather had left the business card from the consultation crew. She picked up the phone and dialed. Calm. Civil. "Yes, this is Elaine Gardner. I'm calling to cancel a consultation for Thursday. It's no longer needed." A pause. "Yes, I'm the homeowner. Yes, I'm sure." She hung up. Heather never noticed. That night, Elaine set the table, her hands moving through the motions of family life like a ghost still doing its job. She ladled stew into bowls, placed linen napkins, refilled Lucy's milk. "Thanks, Grandma," Lucy whispered, quiet but deliberate. Elaine looked down at the child's hand resting near hers, warm and small and honest. Across the table, Heather scrolled through her phone. "I've been thinking, We should replace those awful sconces in the hallway. They're super dated. Andrew glanced at Elaine. What do you think, Mom? Elaine smiled softly. I think you should wait. He raised an eyebrow. Wait for what? She shrugged. Just wait. He didn't push. Not yet. At 10:15 p.m., after the dishwasher whirred to life and Lucy was tucked in with her nightlight glowing, Elaine stepped onto the porch. The wind carried a salty tinge from the ocean 3 miles west, and the neighbors' wind chimes tinkled like distant secrets. Her phone buzzed. Marla Estes. Another offer just came in, $40,000 above asking. They want to close in 2 weeks. I haven't responded. Your move. Elaine looked at the stars. It felt strange to imagine letting it all go. The hydrangeas, the squeaky step on the back deck, Richard's initials carved into the shed beam. And yet, there was peace in the distance. Not grief, just air. She walked back inside, silent as vapor, and closed her bedroom door with a click. The next morning, she made waffles. Andrew shuffled in, rubbing sleep from his eyes, wearing the same college hoodie he'd worn when he moved back in, temporarily, 8 years ago. He grabbed a mug, poured coffee, and lingered in the kitchen. Hey, he said finally, voice casual but unsure. Would you mind helping with the credit card bill this month? Elaine turned from the stove, spatula still in her hand. She met his eyes, and didn't blink. Next day, Elaine sees a heartbreaking drawing Lucy made, family inside, grandma outside. Elaine found it tucked in a stack of construction paper, the corner poking out beneath a glitter-glued unicorn. She was tidying Lucy's room while the family napped off their Sunday brunch indulgence. Something about the edge of that paper made her pause. She pulled it out and stared. It was drawn in thick, earnest strokes. Purple crayon for the house, yellow sun in the top right, stick figures smiling inside. Heather with red lips, Andrew tall and square, Lucy centered between them. Off to the left, outside the house, a smaller figure stood under a tree. Hair gray, dress plain. A word scrawled beneath it, letters slanted but legible. Grandma. Elaine sat on Lucy's bed slowly, the paper trembling in her hands. She wasn't angry. Not at Lucy. Children only draw what they see. And what Lucy saw, what they all saw, was her standing outside, watching the warm light from the window, but never invited in. Not really. That evening, while Heather was on a Zoom call about branding presents and Andrew dozed on the couch with one shoe off, Elaine sat quietly at her desk. She opened the cedar box where she kept the pieces of herself no one else remembered. Richard's watch, a locket from their honeymoon in Charleston, a packet of old Polaroids rubber-banded together. She selected 10 photos and placed them in a slim, leather-bound photo album. A small one, meant to fit in a child's hands. Pictures of her and Richard in the early days, at the county fair, on the porch swing, him lifting Andrew when he was no older than Lucy was now. On the last page, she slid in a picture of Lucy as a baby, swaddled and sleeping in Elaine's arms. She wrote a note in pen, careful to press the words deep into the paper. Lucy, you are the only person in this house who ever truly saw me. Never forget that kindness makes you stronger than anyone in any room. With love bigger than a house, Grandma Elaine. She wrapped the album in brown paper and tied it with a soft green ribbon, the same shade as the sea glass they used to collect in Maine. She slipped it into the bottom drawer of Lucy's dresser, beneath the socks and pajama sets, where Heather wouldn't notice right away. On Monday morning, Elaine dressed in her best pair of slacks and her favorite pearl button blouse. She visited the bank first, her hands steady as she signed the withdrawal slip. "Would you like that in a cashier's check, ma'am?" the teller asked, surprised at the amount. "Yes," Elaine said. "Make it out to the Solace Center for Women and Children." The teller looked up. "That's generous." Elaine smiled. "It's not a donation. It's a repayment." Back home, the hydrangeas in the front yard were blooming out of season, a soft, pale blue like the sky before rain. Her phone buzzed as she watered the roots. Marla ST's buyers ready. Cash in hand. Close in 10 days if you say yes. Elaine walked inside and wiped her hands dry. She passed Andrew in the hallway, but he didn't ask where she'd been. He never did. She could have disappeared 2 weeks ago, and he wouldn't have noticed until the Wi-Fi cut out. She stood in the living room for a moment, looking at the walls, at the family pictures where she was never framed, the furniture she paid for, the kitchen she kept spotless even after chemo stole Richard's strength. And then she went to her bedroom, opened her laptop, and clicked on the one link she had bookmarked without telling anyone. One-way flight, Portland, Oregon. Departure, Friday. She didn't ask permission. She didn't need to. The confirmation email dinged quietly in her inbox. From the hallway, Lucy's voice called, "Grandma? What's a legacy?" Elaine turned off the light. "You'll know it when you feel it, sweetheart." Elaine was in the garden when she heard it, a sound that shattered the morning calm like glass on tile. Heather's voice, piercing, wild. "What the hell is this?" Elaine didn't flinch. She clipped the final rose with slow precision, its pink bloom bright against the shears. Inside the house, the screen door slammed open. "Andrew!" Heather shrieked again. "You need to see this! Right now!" Elaine moved toward the porch, each step unhurried. By the time she reached the doorway, Andrew was hunched over Heather's laptop at the kitchen island, scrolling furiously, jaw clenched. Heather jabbed her manicured finger at the screen. "It's our house, our actual house, on Zillow, listed yesterday." Elaine stepped quietly into the room. Heather spun toward her. "Tell me this is some kind of mistake." Elaine tilted her head. "It's not." Andrew blinked. "Wait, what?" "I listed it," Elaine said evenly. "Through a private agent. It's public now. Offers have already been accepted." Heather's face went slack for a beat, then red. "You can't do that." Elaine met her eyes calmly. "Actually, I can. I still own it." Andrew stood slowly. "Mom, come on. You're not serious." "I've never been more serious," Elaine replied. He let out a disbelieving laugh. "You didn't even tell us." "You never asked," she said. Heather paced like a caged animal, barefoot on the tile. "You said you'd help, with the loan. You smiled and nodded and—" Elaine raised her hand slightly. "I thought about it. Then I remembered last March, the title transfer attempt I never signed." Heather froze. Andrew turned to her. "What's she talking about?" Heather's silence was enough. Elaine took a slow breath, letting the moment steep like tea. "The bank flagged it, because the signature was missing, because you never told me." "Jesus Christ, Heather," Andrew muttered. Heather's voice cracked into something more shrill. "You're really going to sell the house out from under us? Your family?" Elaine didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "I gave you my home, my time, my quiet, and you gave me distance, corners, cropped frames. Now I'm giving you something, too. No, Tice." She turned toward the hallway. Andrew chased her. "Mom, wait. Just tell me what we have to do. Maybe we can reverse it." Elaine stopped, hand resting on the banister. "You can't. The listing is under my name. The deed is mine. The buyers are vetted. The firm's airtight. Marla sent all the documents to a real estate attorney. There's nothing left to fight." Heather's voice trembled. "You're ruining Lucy's life. You know that, right?" Elaine paused mid-step, then turned back. "Number, I'm protecting hers." 3 hours later, a courier arrived. A manila envelope with the final contract and a tidy note from Marla. "Your timeline has been respected. Keys will be exchanged Friday. Pack what you wish to keep." Elaine left it on the dining room table, beside the wilting lilies Heather bought last week for ambiance. Andrew emerged from the study, face tight with defeat. "Mom, please." She looked at him, this time softer. "You've had a long runway, Andrew. I just finally stepped off it." Heather appeared behind him. Her voice was bitter honey. "You know you'll never see Lucy again, right?" Elaine's eyes didn't blink. "Lucy will find her way. Because unlike the two of you, she knows what love actually looks like." That night, Elaine made herself a grilled cheese and poured a glass of Chardonnay. She ate it by the window while dusk slid over the neighborhood like a soft curtain. The kitchen was quiet now. No more screams, just the distant hum of tires and the occasional bark of a dog next door. The calm felt earned. She walked upstairs, past Lucy's door without stopping, and sat at her desk. Opened her flight confirmation, checked in. When she closed the lid, she heard footsteps behind her. Andrew. He looked small, despite the height. When? He asked. Elaine folded her hands. Friday morning. Movers come Thursday. He nodded once, then said nothing, left the room. The sound of packing tape tearing across cardboard echoed through the halls like warning sirens. Boxes stacked crooked along the wall by the stairs, half labeled, some already buckling at the sides. Elaine stood at the threshold of the living room, arms folded, watching the implosion unfold with the quiet calm of someone who'd already made peace with her decision. Heather, in black leggings and a high ponytail, paced like a lioness with nowhere left to pounce. "This is your fault," she snapped at Andrew, slamming a drawer shut so hard the handle clanged loose. "You should have handled the deed years ago. I told you to push it through." Andrew, flustered, red-faced, shoved kitchen gadgets into a box labeled Pantry Misc. "Oh, so now it's all on me? You're the one who tried to transfer it without telling her." Elaine stepped forward. "Don't pack the cast iron skillet. It stays with the house." Heather spun. "Are you serious right now?" Elaine didn't answer. She reached down, picked up a bundle of bubble wrap, and gently wrapped the antique clock Richard had bought on their 25th anniversary. Lucy sat on the steps, hugging her knees, eyes wide. Her backpack lay beside her, zipper half open. "Grandma?" Her voice wobbled. "Where are we going?" Elaine knelt beside her, ignoring the chaos swirling behind them. "Wherever your mom and dad decide," she said softly, brushing Lucy's hair from her cheek. "But you'll be okay. You always land on your feet, like your grandpa." Lucy nodded slowly, though her lip trembled. Behind them, Heather was throwing open cabinet doors now. "I can't believe this is happening. This isn't just some starter condo. This is our life, our address, my Pinterest boards." Andrew rubbed his forehead. "She warned us. We just didn't think she'd actually—" Elaine's voice was level, firm. "You didn't think I'd follow through. That's the real problem." She walked into the dining room and opened the cabinet where Heather kept her display-only dinnerware, crystal glasses, a gravy boat no one had ever used. She began wrapping each piece carefully, not for them, for the donation center. When she came to the antique mirror Heather had once bragged about finding in a restoration boutique, Elaine paused. She looked at her own reflection in the warped glass, eyes steady, lips neutral. Then she peeled the label off the box beside it and wrote in clean black ink, "Donation fragile." Heather noticed and went pale. "You don't have the right." Elaine didn't look up. "It doesn't fit in your car, and it doesn't belong in your new life." At 4 p.m., a knock at the door shifted the energy. Elaine opened it to find Brian, her lawyer, in his usual navy blazer, holding a folder and an envelope. "Finalized," he said. "Transfer confirmed. Buyer wired funds this morning." She took the envelope, thumbed through the paperwork, and signed the final signature line with the same grace she used to write birthday cards. Brian tipped his head toward the house behind her. "You good?" "I'm free," she said. As Brian walked to his car, Andrew called from the stairs. "So that's it? You're just cutting us off?" Elaine turned slowly. "Number I'm letting go." Heather scoffed, but even her voice cracked. "You'll regret this." Elaine gave her the smallest of smiles. "I already regret staying this long." At dusk, she stepped outside with the house keys in her palm, a smooth, familiar weight that now felt ceremonial. She drove with the windows down, wind pulling at her sleeves, sunlight stretched low across the hills. The cemetery gate creaked as she pushed through. She found Richard's headstone, clean, polished, untouched by weeds. She knelt, knees pressing into damp earth, and placed the keys on the small stone ledge beneath his name. "I'm done, Rich," she whispered. "They boxed it all up, but they never boxed me in." Elaine stood at the top of the stairs, listening to the stillness that followed. No footsteps pounding, no faucet dripping, no TV murmuring from the next room. Only quiet, honest, full-bodied quiet, the kind that doesn't ache, the kind that arrives like grace. She walked barefoot through the hallway, her soles brushing over the hardwood she and Richard had sanded down together in 1998. Every creak felt like a shared memory. The scent of lavender still lingered faintly in the air from the cleaner she'd used earlier, mixed with the deeper, woody smell of the old house settling into itself. Room by room, she moved slowly, not checking, not inspecting, just honoring. In the guest room, she paused at the windowsill. The view stretched over the backyard, where Richard had once chased a toddler Andrew through fallen leaves, laughing so hard he'd pulled a muscle. The window had a tiny crack in the corner from when Lucy's tennis ball hit it last spring. Elaine had left it, a flaw she'd grown fond of. Not everything needed fixing. She passed the linen closet and let her hand trail along the edge of the door, remembering all the arguments she and Richard had over towel folding. He rolled, she folded. She had won, eventually. He never admitted it. In the bedroom, their bedroom, she knelt beside the nightstand, not expecting anything. Just drawn. Her fingers felt the back edge of the drawer, tapped the underside instinctively. Something shifted. A folded piece of thick, yellowing paper slipped forward. Her heart paused. She opened it with reverent hands. "Elle, if you're reading this, it means you outlived my stubborn self. Good. Someone had to. Don't let them shrink you down. You built this. You held it together when I couldn't lift my own hand. This house isn't walls. It's yours. And it will go where you go. Love, always. R." Elaine folded the note and pressed it to her lips. No tears came, just that deep, centered stillness. Downstairs, the living room looked cleaner than it had in years, vacuum lines crisp in the carpet, coffee table gleaming. She'd removed the fake succulents, the LED flameless candles, and the picture-perfect but soulless decor Heather had insisted made the place pop. Elaine opened the old sideboard cabinet and took out the last family portrait she would ever move. The one where Lucy, 6 at the time, had accidentally blinked, and Heather insisted on retaking it. Elaine had loved that photo anyway. She placed it in a linen-lined box alongside Richard's cufflinks and a photo of the two of them in New Orleans, grinning in the rain. Then, with care, she lit a small vanilla clove candle on the mantel, her own kind of closing prayer. The scent wrapped around her like a memory she'd been waiting to feel. On her way out, she stopped by Lucy's school. "Mrs. Cross," she said gently to the teacher, who looked surprised to see her, "I have something I'd like you to give Lucy." Quietly. She handed her the sealed envelope, one with a tiny pressed flower in the corner and Lucy's name written in her best penmanship. "Of course," Mrs. Cross said, taking it with a kind smile. She might not understand it yet, but she will. That evening, Elaine stood outside the front door. The porch light hadn't been turned on. She liked it that way. No more spotlights, no more watching. Her phone rang just as she reached the sidewalk. Marla Estes. She answered, already knowing. "Elaine," Marla said. "Keys are exchanged. It's done." Elaine looked back at the house, now just a shell. The plane broke through the clouds, and there it was, Oregon's rugged coastline, all wind-brushed cliffs and deep, churning gray. Elaine pressed her forehead lightly to the cold windowpane, watching waves claw at the shore like they were trying to remember how to hold on. She didn't feel sadness. She felt cleared out, like a forest fire had passed through and made room for something wild to grow. By the time the airport shuttle dropped her at the modest yet elegant senior living community in Florence, the rain had softened to a mist. The sign at the front read, "Driftwood Bluffs," independent living with a view, carved in driftwood and stone. It was quieter than she'd expected, quieter in a good way. The suite wasn't large, but it didn't need to be. Clean white walls, large windows that drank the ocean in whole, and a balcony with space for 2 chairs and a coffee table. Elaine stepped out onto it, the sea wind tugging at her coat, and closed her eyes. No more accusations, no more being moved around like furniture, just breathe, just salt, just sky. That evening, she wandered into the community rec room and found a man sitting alone at the upright piano, playing a slow, familiar jazz tune. His hair was a wispy silver, combed back neatly, and he wore a blue cable-knit sweater with a frayed cuff. She hesitated in the doorway. He looked up and smiled. That soft, steady kind of smile that didn't need anything in return. "New?" he asked, nodding toward her. "Just landed." she said. Welcome to the edge of the world, he said, gesturing to the armchair beside him. She sat. I'm Walter, he added. Widowed, retired engineer, moved here last fall. You? Elaine, she said, also widowed, recently uprooted. Voluntarily? She smiled. Very, he chuckled. Best kind. By Thursday, Elaine had found a small art room on the second floor. Supplies were free for residents: brushes, pastels, canvas. It smelled faintly of linseed oil and cedar. She hadn't painted in almost 20 years, but her hands remembered. Muscle memory and buried desire. She dipped the brush into cobalt blue and laid the first stroke across a blank canvas. Bold, unapologetic. The ocean, not as it was, but as it felt. That night, her phone buzzed as she stood on the balcony with a cup of chamomile tea. New message. Lucy Grandma, I miss you. No one makes breakfast right here. Elaine's breath caught, not in pain, but in tenderness. She set down her tea and opened her camera. The sun was just melting into the sea, setting the waves on fire. She snapped a photo and sent it back. Reply, I miss you too, my sweet girl. This is what freedom looks like. You'll understand someday. She stared at the screen for a long moment before placing it face down. The next morning, Elaine was carrying her grocery tote back from the lobby market, fresh berries, oat crackers, a wedge of brie, when she noticed the woman, Heather, standing stiffly outside the main doors in heels far too high for the uneven pavers, her arms crossed tightly over a trench coat, her hair frizzed at the edges, her face blotched red from either the wind or rage, maybe both. Elaine stopped in her tracks, tote swinging gently against her leg. Heather spotted her and stormed forward. You think you can just disappear? You think it's over? Elaine glanced toward the front desk. Walter had appeared in the hallway behind the receptionist, brows lifting with curiosity. Elaine met Heather halfway, her voice calm, quiet, but firm. You're not supposed to be here. Heather scoffed. Oh, I'm here. And I'm not leaving until you explain yourself to Lucy. She's devastated. Elaine's eyes softened. I've already spoken to Lucy, and Lucy knows the difference between a goodbye and an escape. Heather's expression faltered for half a second, then hardened again. You think you're the hero in all this? Elaine leaned in, close enough that Heather had to stop breathing just to brace herself. I'm not the hero, she said. I'm the architect, and I just finished the final floor plan of my life. Behind her, Walter opened the art room door. Elaine, we saved your seat. Heather glared, unmoving. Elaine stepped past her without a word, and didn't look back. Elaine opened the door but didn't step aside. Heather stood on the threshold, eyes bloodshot and rimmed with eyeliner that had smudged into something less curated and more human. Her coat was damp from Oregon's sharp mist, and she clutched her designer bag like a shield. I just want to talk, she said, voice soft, carefully rehearsed. Elaine smiled, not cruel, not cold, just done. You flew 900 miles to talk? Heather shifted on her heels. Look, I know I messed things up, but Lucy cries every night. She doesn't understand. I'm not here to fight. Elaine stepped back just enough to cross her arms. You came to manipulate, not talk. Heather's nostrils flared. You don't have to be like this. No, Elaine said. I chose to be like this. Just like you chose to erase me one filtered photo at a time. The lobby behind her was quiet, save for the low hum of a community piano class warming up. Walter, probably, running scales again. The scent of fresh cinnamon muffins drifted in from the cafe down the hall. Cozy. Safe. Heron Heather pushed forward. You're tearing apart your family over a house. Elaine cocked her head. It wasn't just a house, it was my house, and you didn't just want it. You tried to steal it. Quietly, legally, with forged signatures and late-night whispers. Heather's face cracked, just for a moment, then hardened. We had no choice. We were drowning in debt. You were just sitting on it. I was grieving, Elaine cut in, voice like frost. And you counted on that silence. You didn't just take advantage of it, you weaponized it. Heather's hands balled into fists. This isn't fair. Elaine chuckled. Neither is using your child's tears as currency. Heather stepped forward again. I'll sue. I mean it. Elaine held up a finger. Stop. Don't finish that sentence. Heather paused. First, the house was in a trust Richard and I set up years before he passed. You were removed from it 2 years ago. You don't have standing. Heather blinked. Second, I have every document, every title, every payment I made after your accidental overdrafts, every lawyer name. You won't win. A beat of silence passed between them. Heather looked as if she wanted to say something else, but all that came out was a tired, guttural sound. You used to need me, she said finally. Elaine softened just a degree. I still need. Just not you. Heather's mouth opened again, but she stopped when she saw the movement across the courtyard. Mrs. Feldman, Elaine's next-door neighbor, stood by her hydrangea planter, watering with a pink tin and pretending not to watch. But her eyes kept darting toward the door. Heather followed Elaine's gaze and pulled her coat tighter. I came all this way. Elaine gave her a long look. Not cruel, not kind. Just done. There's a shuttle every hour to Eugene Airport. Good luck catching it. She stepped back and shut the door, gently. Inside, Elaine leaned against the frame, breathing in the stillness. The walls of her new home didn't absorb pain like the old house did. They reflected peace back at her. A knock came again. 3 sharp taps. She opened it a sliver. It wasn't Heather. It was Mrs. Feldman. You all right? The woman asked, offering a warm, knowing smile. She looked like she wanted to set something on fire. Elaine exhaled a small laugh. She always does when she doesn't get her way. You want me to call someone? Elaine shook her head. She's no one now. Back inside, Elaine turned off her phone's silent mode and saw the list of missed texts. Andrew, 4. Mom, please talk to Heather. This is ridiculous. Lucy's asking questions. You're being petty. She clicked on the thread, held her finger to the contact. Block. Confirmed. The screen blinked blank. Next day, Elaine gripped the phone a little tighter. Her heart, which hadn't flinched through Heather's threats or Andrew's pleading, fluttered now like a startled bird. Lucy? She whispered into the receiver, a shaky breath on the other end. Then, I used Daddy's phone, but I deleted the call. He doesn't know. Elaine stepped onto the balcony, eyes scanning the gray horizon where sea met sky. Are you okay? I miss you, Lucy said simply, voice thick with something too big for 9 years old. Mom said you're gone. But you're not, are you? You're just somewhere new. Elaine swallowed a lump. I'm somewhere better. Safer. But not gone, sweetheart. Never gone. Silence, then a rustling sound, like the phone was shifting. I'm making you something, Lucy said. I'm mailing it. I asked Mrs. Cross for the address. She said you left her a note. Elaine smiled, eyes stinging. She's a very smart woman. I want to grow up like you, Lucy said quietly. Elaine closed her eyes and let that settle inside her, not as a wound, but as a healing. The package arrived 3 days later, small, wrapped in paper covered with purple stars and held together by an ambitious amount of tape. Elaine opened it slowly, preserving each fold. Inside was a drawing, 2 stick figures holding hands on a balcony. One had curly gray hair and a purple sweater, the other had a big smile and pigtails. In blocky letters, the title read, Not Outside This Time. Elaine pressed it to her chest. There was also a photo, a slightly bent one, clearly from Heather's stash. It was a candid, taken before Lucy's birthday party. Elaine hadn't noticed it at the time. In the photo, she was kneeling to fix Lucy's shoelace, and Lucy was looking down at her, laughing. Pure, unfiltered affection. Tucked behind the photo was a letter, short, written in pencil. Dear Grandma, everyone always says be nice, but nice isn't enough. You were kind, that's better. I hope I grow up like that. Like you. Love, Lucy. Elaine sat for a long time without moving. She didn't cry, but her chest rose and fell with a steadiness that felt earned, like someone finally set down a weight after years of pretending it wasn't heavy. Later that afternoon, she pulled out a locked metal box from the bottom of her closet and opened it. Inside were the important things, Bank papers, ID copies, notarized documents. She slid a new file into the front of the stack, labeled in crisp black letters, Lucy Gardner, Trust Fund. She had spoken to her lawyer the previous day. The paperwork was ready, a sum substantial enough to matter, but protected, delayed, with stipulations. She added a short clause. In her own handwriting at the bottom, this account becomes fully accessible at age 18, provided the beneficiary has completed at least 40 hours of documented community service or outreach work. Why? Because kindness unlocks everything. And then she did something she hadn't done in years. She pulled out her grandfather's fountain pen, a family relic Richard had insisted they keep in working condition, and she wrote Lucy a letter on thick cream stationery. She didn't tell her everything. Just enough to remind her that family isn't inherited. It's chosen every day, in action and care. She folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, and then placed that envelope into a larger one, alongside a copy of the trust certificate. She reached into her desk drawer, took out her sealing wax kit, untouched since Richard's retirement party invitations, and lit the stub of red wax. With calm hands, she pressed the seal down and lifted it clean. LG in curling script. The cafe smelled of cardamom and espresso. Every morning around 8:15, the little bell above the door chimed as Elaine stepped inside, hair tucked neatly under a knit beret, sketchpad tucked under one arm. "Morning, Miss Gardner," the barista called. "Your usual?" "Please," she smiled, settling into the second table by the window, her spot now. Locals started to know her. The man who ran the bookstore across the street nodded every time he passed. The cafe owner's daughter, 9 and inquisitive, would sneak peeks at Elaine's sketchpad as she sipped her hot chocolate. She didn't need the noise of approval. She just needed the quiet of being seen. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, Elaine walked 2 blocks to the community center with a box of paint tubes and worn brushes that once belonged to her husband. The classroom always smelled faintly of glue sticks and wet paper towels. 7 kids gathered there, all between ages 6 and 11, some loud, some shy, all eager. They called her Ms. E. Today's lesson, framing. "Framing matters," she told them, holding up an empty picture frame. "Not just in paintings, in life. Where you place people, how much room you give them, where the light hits, it all says something." One boy asked if she'd ever had a painting stolen. She smiled. "Number, but I've had pieces of myself taken." They didn't quite understand. But one girl, blue hoodie, shy eyes, leaned forward like she wanted to. At night, she opened the balcony doors and let the ocean in. The waves didn't ask anything of her. They just kept coming. Steady, honest, alive. The kind of rhythm you could rest a soul on. She began sleeping better, deeper. One night, she dreamed of Richard. He was standing on their old porch, wearing that faded gray cardigan she hated but he loved. He looked at her and said simply, "You did right." She reached out to touch him, and the dream blurred, not with sadness, but light. She woke up with her palm open on the pillow. By the second month, the cafe owner had offered to display some of her art in the corner by the window. "Nothing big," he'd said, "but people like things that feel like someone meant them." So she brought in 3 small canvases, one of waves, one of a child's hand gripping a paintbrush, and one, her favorite, of an old house, seen from the perspective of someone walking away from it. She titled it, "Framed but Free." No price tag, no artist bio, just a tiny brass plaque with the name. On a drizzly afternoon, she returned from the community center with brush smudges on her sweater and a paper star one of the kids had made her. The cafe was quieter than usual. The bell over the door didn't ring when she entered. It had broken that morning. The barista handed her a note with her coffee. "From someone who came by asking about your art." Elaine opened it. It was from a woman in town who ran a gallery. She'd seen Framed but Free, asked around, and wanted to purchase it. Not for resale, but to hang in her own office. "It made me feel like I'd finally let go of something I didn't know I'd been holding. Please say yes." Elaine folded the note slowly, fingertips brushing over the ink. Elaine stood barefoot in her sunlit studio, the ocean wind teasing through the cracked window. The scent of salt and linseed oil mingled in the room like memory and possibility had finally learned how to live side by side. Her canvas sat on the easel, nearly finished. Bold lines, sharp contrast, unexpected color shifts where others might have played it safe. She'd called it framed but free, and now it had a soul. In the painting, a figure stood before an empty picture frame, hands outstretched, eyes turned not toward the viewer, but beyond, toward a vast, untamed horizon. There were no chains, no family portraits crowding the space, just air, space, and something unspoken, choice. She dipped her brush into deep gold and dragged a final streak across the edge of the frame. Finished. 3 weeks later, the piece sold at a charity auction for a local shelter that helped single mothers and displaced women. The bidding started modestly. By the end, it had tripled expectations. Elaine watched from the back of the gallery, hands tucked in her coat pockets, as the gavel dropped. "All proceeds?" the organizer had asked afterward, hesitant. Elaine had smiled. "All. My husband would have wanted that. And frankly, so do I." She left the gallery that night with nothing but a receipt, a quiet ache in her feet, and the strange, clean feeling of having released something sacred into the world. The next morning, her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. The number was unfamiliar, but something told her to pick up. "Hello? Ms. Gardner? This is Margie Cross, Lucy's teacher." Elaine's heart fluttered. "Is she okay?" "Oh, yes, she's fine. I thought you should know. She talks about you. A lot. She gave a presentation on people who shape us, and she brought in a copy of that photo you sent, the one of the waves. She said, 'My grandma paints the ocean because she knows how to let go.'" Elaine closed her eyes, hand pressed over her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than you know." She also wrote a poem, the teacher added. It ended with, "I want to be soft like her, but strong like waves." Elaine laughed softly, but tears slid down anyway. That night, she painted nothing. She didn't need to. A week later, she wrote her will. It was 1 page, no paragraphs, no fine print, just a list, handwritten on thick ivory paper, folded cleanly down the center. At the top, it read, "To be opened upon my passing. Instructions enclosed." And then, Lucy. Trust fully hers at 18. No intermediaries. No conditions other than kindness. The art room. Donation of supplies and an annual scholarship to any child who can't afford art class. Walter. The cardigan Richard would have given to a friend like him. Heather and Andrew. Nothing. Not from malice, just clarity. To the house I sold and the life I rebuilt. Thank you for the lessons. But I take only what I gave. Legacy. She sealed it in a pale gray envelope, tied with twine, and labeled it simply, "Final." One evening, as the clouds lit up in blush pinks and bruised purples, Elaine stood on the beach, shoes in hand. The cold Pacific pulled at the hem of her jeans as the tide reached for her toes. Behind her, the gallery had framed one of her newest works. Ahead of her, gulls spun low and loud in the wind. She no longer needed to prove herself worthy of being in the picture. She had painted her own. Back home, she sat at her small desk, lit a single candle, and opened her journal. At the top of the page, she wrote the final sentence of the life she'd rebuilt, earned, defended. Then she placed the pen down, exhaled slowly, and smiled.